Imagine this for a moment. A mother drops off her daughter and say, "Goodbye, Mom. I love you. Take care of yourself." Simple words, right? But those words become this unbearable echo because, well, it's the last time she ever saw her child. She vanished, just like that. Today, we're doing a deep dive into the disappearance of Pepita Redhair. She was a 27-year-old Navajo woman, and she went missing from Albuquerque, New Mexico, back on March 24th, 2020. Our goal here isn't just to tell her story. We want to really unpack the layers her families fight, the awful obstacles they hit, and how Pepita's case, sadly, highlights these huge systemic problems around missing and murdered Indigenous women, MMIW. We've looked at a few sources for this, an investigative piece from ID and also a transcript from a YouTube documentary. Gives us a couple of different angles on this really complex situation. So let's get into it. Who was Pepita Redhair? Well, friends and family describe her as really spirited, happy. She was born August 4th, 1992 in Gallup, New Mexico. Grew up in a small town called Crown Point, part of the Navajo Nation. People said she was adventurous, loved drawing, cooking, skating, just full of energy. Big heart, made friends easily. But even though she was close to her roots, Pepita apparently always dreamed bigger, Wanted to move to a city, find more opportunities. She actually did a couple of semesters at Navajo Technical College, got great grades, but eventually made the move to Albuquerque.
Right. Albuquerque being the biggest city in New Mexico, about an hour from home. A big change from Crown Point, which is, less than 3,000 people?
Exactly. And she seemed to be doing really well there. Got into the University of New Mexico, kept up those great grades. She was thinking about becoming a teacher, maybe an engineer. She also had a job working as a cashier at a Hot Topic. Seems like her life was really moving forward.
And what's really striking, despite all these new things happening in her life, her connection to her family stayed incredibly strong. Her mom, Anita King, talks about this unbreakable bond. Pepita texted her good morning every single day, without fail.
Every day.
Every day. And they were constantly talking, calling, messaging. She went home all the time, apparently. Her room was always ready for her. And this daily communication, it's not just a small detail, it becomes this really crucial baseline later on when that communication suddenly stops.
Yeah, that makes sense. That consistency really matters. So this strong family connection is there. And then in 2016, she meets Nicholas Kay. He went by Nick. Her sister, Shelda Livingston, said at first the relationship seemed, amazing. They were affectionate. Pepita was apparently head over heels. Talked about marriage within 6 months even. Nick was also Navajo, which Pepita was reportedly excited about sharing their culture.
And things moved fast. Within those 6 months, she moved into Nick's place where he lived with his father.
So on the surface, it might look like things are going great, moving quickly toward this future she wanted.
But unfortunately, beneath that surface, a much darker picture started to emerge.
How so?
Well, just days before she disappeared, Pepita went home to her mother. And she had a black eye, a swollen lip. She told her mom that Nick's drinking had gotten really bad, leading to these horrible fights, and that he'd become physically violent. Yeah. Her mom and sister, understandably, begged her to stay home. They saw the danger signs. But Pepita was torn. She apparently believed him when he said it wouldn't happen again, and she went back to his house.
That's heartbreaking. Believing it won't happen again.
It is. And crucially, this wasn't like a one-off incident that came out of nowhere. There were previous signs. Police had been called to their home before for verbal arguments, like back in January 2020. And maybe even more telling, her medical records showed she'd been to the hospital multiple times, and some visits actually list victim of assault as a reason. So there was this documented pattern of domestic violence building.
A pattern that seems like it should have raised major alarm somewhere.
You would think so, but it seems tragically overlooked.
Which just makes what happened next even more devastating.
Yeah.
So March 24th, 2020, Anita, her mother, drives Pepita back to Nick's house in Albuquerque. And those last words exchanged, "Mom, I love you. Take care of yourself." Just gut-wrenching in hindsight. Then the very next day, March 25th, that daily good morning text. It never arrives.
Right. And Anita immediately knows something is wrong. Days go by, silence. Completely out of character for Pepita, given how close they were.
This wasn't someone who would just drop off the map without telling her mom?
Absolutely not. So by March 27th, maybe the 28th, Anita is frantic. She calls Nick. And his response is just vague. He says Pepita left. He doesn't know where she is.
That seems odd, not very concerned.
Exactly. It raises questions immediately. Why wasn't he more worried? Why wasn't he helping look? So Anita does what any parent would do. She contacts the Albuquerque Police Department, APD, to report Pepita missing.
Yeah, what happens?
She gets brushed off. Officers tell her basically it's legal for adults to go missing if they want to, a response that's unfortunately really common in these situations.
So frustrating.
Terribly. They tell her to go to the Crown Point Police Department first, then later they say try the Navajo Nation Police. But the Navajo Nation Police say Albuquerque is outside their jurisdiction. It's this classic runaround, sometimes called the jurisdictional hot potato.
Jurisdictional hot potato. Can you explain that a bit more? What does that actually mean in practice for a case like this?
Yeah, it's a huge issue, especially in areas involving tribal lands bordering state or city jurisdictions. Because of historical treaties and complex legal frameworks, you end up with tribal police, state police, city police, sometimes federal agencies like the FBI, all potentially having a piece of the puzzle, but no single agency might have clear sole authority or, crucially, the resources and agreements to work seamlessly together. So a case can literally get bounced between departments, with each saying it's not quite their responsibility or they lack the authority to investigate fully in another's territory. It creates these gaps, these legal blind spots where investigations stall or never even properly begin.
And victims like Pepita fall right into those gaps.
Precisely. And it leads to critical delays in things like collecting evidence or interviewing potential witnesses.
And as if that wasn't a big enough hurdle, the COVID-19 pandemic was just starting to hit hard right then, March 2020.
Yeah, terrible timing. APD apparently used the pandemic as a reason they couldn't do in-person interviews or investigations.
What did that mean, practically speaking, for finding Pepita?
Well, it effectively shut down any immediate on-the-ground investigation during what investigators call the golden hour, that critical first 24 to 48 hours. That's when you need to gather surveillance footage before it's erased, secure potential crime scenes, talk to people right away while memories are fresh.
So the pandemic restrictions basically gave them an excuse to delay.
It certainly seems to have exacerbated the delays, yeah. For a case already facing jurisdictional hurdles, it meant crucial early leads were likely lost. It basically guaranteed the case would go cold fast.
So the official systems are failing her. What does the family do? They can't just sit back.
No way. They were left completely on their own, so they started their own search, printing flyers, posting them all over Albuquerque. Pepita's sister, Shelda, she even went to Nick's house, stood outside the gate just yelling Pepita's name. She said she saw someone peek through the blinds, but then just shut them. Nobody came out.
Wow. Just no cooperation at all, even then.
Seems like it. Which is incredibly suspicious, right? If your girlfriend is missing and her sister is outside yelling for her, wouldn't you come out? Talk to her.
You'd think so. And Nick's own actions continued to be, well, strange. It wasn't until April 19th, almost a month after Pepita vanished, that he reported her missing himself.
A whole month later, yeah.
And his story to the police was that he and Pepita had a fight on March 26th, and she just left on foot. Then he added this detail, claiming Pepita texted him on March 27th, saying she was with another man, someone named Lamy, and he speculated she'd run off with this guy.
That whole story just smells fishy, doesn't it? Especially considering her mom couldn't reach her from the 25th onwards.
Right, the timing feels off, and then there's the phone.
Yes, the phone. This is a huge piece. Just a few days after Pepita was last seen, around March 30th, Anita gets a text message from Pepita's number.
But it wasn't her.
No, it was a homeless man. And he told Anita he bought the phone from some random guy.
Okay, that screams foul play. If she just left voluntarily, why would her phone be sold on the street days later?
Exactly. That discovery should have been a massive red flag for investigators, immediately casting serious doubt on Nick's story about her running off.
And what about this Lamy guy Nick mentioned? Did they ever find him?
They did. The family, actually, through their own efforts, found him via Facebook posts. His real name was Laramie. And Laramie had a very different story. He remembered seeing Pepita clearly, but it was on his birthday, March 10th. That's 2 full weeks before she disappeared, not after.
March 10th.
Yeah.
Not the 27th, like Nick claimed.
Right. Laramie said Pepita brought him a birthday cupcake, and Nick was there and got visibly jealous, started arguing with her. Laramie even told the family he saw Nick hit Pepita as Laramie was leaving that day.
That corroborates what Pepita told her mother about the violence. Did the police talk to Laramie?
Tragically, no. The police never officially interviewed Laramie, and then he passed away in 2021.
Oh my God, so that crucial piece of information, that potential witness, just gone.
Gone. It's a massive failure in the investigation. He could have directly contradicted Nick's timeline and confirmed the abuse.
This is just layer upon layer of missed opportunities and neglect. Then things took another dark turn, right? With a tip about possible trafficking.
Yes, in May 2020, the family got an anonymous tip. It led them to this place called City Park, but it wasn't a park. It was apparently located inside a rundown hotel.
Inside a hotel. Strange.
Very. And what they saw there was deeply disturbing. They described seeing 3 men on bikes using walkie-talkies, just staring at them. And in the back of the parking lot, a line of vans with tinted windows, out-of-state plates. The whole scene just felt wrong. Predatory.
That must have been terrifying. Did they report this?
They did, but like everything else, it doesn't seem like it led to any significant police action. It just fueled the family's worst fears that maybe Pepita had been trafficked.
And all this time, for over a year and a half, basically silence from officials, no media attention.
Pretty much. No formal interviews with the family by police, no real coverage. It's a stark example of how MMIW cases are often ignored by mainstream media and even law enforcement until there's significant pressure.
Which is what the family eventually created. They saw the massive attention the Gabby Petito case got. The resources poured into that search.
Right. And they felt, understandably, that Pepita deserved that same level of attention and urgency. That disparity was just so blatant.
So they decided they had to do something public. They planned a rally.
They did. And what started as a rally for Pepita on October 3rd, 2021, it kind of exploded. It became this huge protest, really not just for Pepita, but for all missing and murdered Indigenous women in New Mexico. They highlighted other cases, too, like Riley Rose Bentley.
And did that public pressure make a difference?
It seems it did. Within a week of that big protest, APD suddenly reached out to Pepita's family, said they wanted to get their side of the story.
Their side of the story.
Yeah.
After a year and a half.
Exactly. The first real engagement. APD acknowledged Nick's domestic violence history then and basically admitted the case had gone cold. It really shows how vital that public outcry can be, sadly.
You mentioned some shocking statistics earlier about New Mexico and MMIW cases. Can you remind us of those and how Pepita's experience fits that pattern?
Yeah, it's grim. A 2019 MMIW task force report for New Mexico found that despite having the 5th largest Indigenous population in the U.S., the state had the highest number of MMIW cases nationally. And get this, in a 5-year period looked at by the task force, only 5 out of 92 active MMIW cases have been solved. 5 out of 92.
That's appalling.
It is, and Pepita's case is almost a textbook example of why. You see the jurisdictional confusion, the initial dismissal by law enforcement, the lack of resources, the loss of crucial early evidence. These are the systemic failures that fuel that statistic. Laws like Savannah's Act and the Violence Against Women Act reauthorizations have tried to patch some of these jurisdictional holes and improve data collection. But Pepita's story shows the gap between legislation and effective, consistent action on the ground is still huge.
So after the protest, there was some movement, albeit incredibly late. The district attorney assigned investigators.
Yes, eventually DA Raul Torres assigned 2 investigators. They did start doing some of the things you'd expect, getting warrants, looking at electronic data, finally taking official statements, talking to the FBI. They created a DNA profile for Pepita to check against Jane Doe databases. And they finally collected evidence the family had been holding on to themselves for years.
Evidence the family had to keep safe themselves.
Seems that way. But even with this later activity, there's been this persistent silence from authorities.
Yeah, you mentioned her case was featured on shows like Disappeared and Never Seen Again.
Right, in 2022 and 2023, big platforms. But APD refused to comment for either program.
The lack of transparency is worrying, isn't it? It doesn't exactly inspire confidence that everything possible is being done.
It really doesn't. It leaves the family and the public wondering about the true status and priority of the investigation.
And the impact on the family is just impossible to quantify. Her mother, Anita, said as recently as April 2023 that there are still no official suspects, no persons of interest. She feels like nobody is really investigating anymore. Nobody's communicating with her.
And tragically, Pepita's father passed away before ever finding out what happened to his daughter. That's a pain no family should endure.
There's also the GoFundMe comparison.
Yeah, it's stark. The family's GoFundMe for Pepita has raised about $1,500 over several years. You compare that to other high-profile missing person cases where campaigns raised over $100,000 in, like, a month.
It just highlights this massive disparity in whose stories get attention, whose families get support. It's painful to see.
It really is. It speaks volumes about which lives seem to garner more public concern and resources.
So to recap, we have Pepita, This vibrant young woman with dreams, caught in a relationship with clear, documented warning signs of abuse. She disappears, and her family's pleas for help are met with jurisdictional runarounds and dismissals, compounded by the pandemic. They're forced to become their own investigators.
Right. Facing silence and inaction for over a year and a half until public pressure finally forces some, albeit belated, official response. It's a story of devastating neglect.
And you just have to think about what that means. A family searching deserts, begging police just to talk to them. What does that say about the systems meant to protect people?
It says those systems are fundamentally failing certain communities. And the question that lingers is, what's the real cost of ignoring these pleas? Not just for the families living in this unbearable limbo, but for justice itself, for societal trust.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? In this age where information flies around constantly, where some stories are everywhere and others are invisible, how many more Paquitas are out there? How many families are waiting, hoping someone will finally listen, finally act, before their loved one's story just fades into another unsolved file, another cold case?
It's a deeply unsettling thought.
If you listening have any information at all about Pepita Redhair's disappearance or her whereabouts, please contact the Bernalillo County District Attorney's Office. The number is 505-222-1101.